They called it a prison scratch, a jagged, ugly black ink blot on the forearm of the only woman in the platoon. The men of SEAL Team 4 laughed at her, whispered she was a diversity hire, and bet on when she'd quit. They didn't know that the ugly mark wasn't a mistake. It was a receipt for a debt that the highest-ranking officer in the US military could never repay until the moment he walked in and silenced them all. The heat at the forward operating base in Jalalabad was a physical weight pressing down on the corrugated tin roofs of the barracks. But inside the mess hall of Bravo Platoon, the atmosphere was colder than a grave. Chief Petty Officer Jordan Vance sat alone at a metal table, her tray of food untouched. She was the first woman to successfully navigate the experimental integration program for SEAL Team 4, a classified initiative that most of the men in the room regarded as a political stunt. Jordan was a striking figure, tall with skin the color of deep obsidian, and a gaze that unsettled the men because it gave nothing away. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She didn't complain. She just worked. But silence in a brotherhood built on testosterone and noise was often interpreted as weakness. "Hey, Vance!" a voice boomed across the hall. It was Master Chief Brody Bull Carter. He was a mountain of a man, a veteran of 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Syria. He sat with his boots up on a chair, holding court with 3 other operators, Miller, a sniper from Texas, and Kowalski, a heavy weapons specialist, who followed Carter like a shadow. Jordan didn't look up. She slowly peeled an orange, her movements precise. "I'm talking to you, G.I. Jane," Carter sneered, standing up and walking over. The mess hall went quiet. The other soldiers, rangers, and support staff kept their heads down. Nobody interfered with SEAL business. Carter stopped right at her table. He leaned down, his face inches from her ear. "We're doing a gear check in 10. Don't be late, and for God's sake, cover that thing up. It's embarrassing." He pointed a thick finger at Jordan's right forearm. She had her sleeves rolled up to the elbow to combat the heat. There on the inside of her forearm was a tattoo, but it wasn't the standard military ink. It wasn't a trident, a flag, or a grim reaper. It looked like chaos. It was a series of jagged, interlocking black geometrical lines that formed a crude, almost shattered shield shape. Inside the shape were 3 distinct, ugly scratches. It looked like something done in a basement with a rusty needle. "You hear me?" Carter pressed, grinning as Miller snickered behind him. "It looks like a prison scratch, or maybe a gang sign from back in the hood. Is that it? Vance, you representing your set while wearing our uniform." The racial undertone hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Jordan finally stopped peeling the orange. She looked up, her eyes dark and unreadable. "It's not a gang sign, Master Chief." "Then what is it?" Carter laughed, looking around the room for validation. "Because it looks like trash. It looks like you got drunk and let a blind man draw on you. It's a disgrace to the uniform. You want to be a Tier 1 operator, you gotta look the part. Not like some street thug." "It's personal," Jordan said softly. "Personal," Miller chimed in. "Honey, personal is a butterfly on your ankle. That thing on your arm is a billboard for bad decisions. You know General Stone is coming for the debrief next week. If he sees that ghetto ink on you, he's gonna have you scrubbed from the program before you can say, 'affirmative action.'" Carter slammed his hand on the table, rattling her tray. "Wear long sleeves, 24/7. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see you, frankly, but command says we have to babysit. So hide the ink or I'll sandpaper it off myself." Jordan looked at Carter's hand on the table, then up at his eyes. For a split second, a flash of something terrifying passed through her face, a cold, predatory capability that made the hair on Miller's neck stand up. But just as quickly it was gone. "Understood, Master Chief," she said calmly. She stood up, took her tray, and walked to the disposal bin. Her back was straight, her walk rhythmic and silent. "Waste of a roster slot," Carter muttered, spitting on the floor. "She won't last a week in the field." He couldn't have been more wrong. Jordan Vance hadn't just survived the field. She had been born in it. And that tattoo wasn't a mark of shame. It was a map. The training exercise the next morning was designed to break people. It was a live-fire kill house simulation, a labyrinth of plywood walls, smoke generators, and pop-up targets equipped with sensory feedback vests. The objective was simple: breach clear, extract the hostage, and exfil in under 4 minutes. "Alpha Team, you're up!" the instructor shouted over the roar of the ventilation fans. Carter took point. Miller was on the rear guard. They assigned Jordan to package security, basically carrying the dummy hostage. It was the role usually given to the rookie to keep them out of the way of the shooting. "Just keep your head down and don't trip over your own feet." "Vance," Carter radioed as they stacked up on the door. "Copy," Jordan whispered. The breach charge blew the door inward with a concussion that rattled teeth. Carter and Kowalski surged in, rifles up. The sound of suppressed carbine fire hissed through the air. Pept, 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 pept. They moved well. They were SEALs after all. But they were arrogant. As they moved into the second room, a blind corner, a spot where an enemy could hide out of sight, was overlooked by Kowalski. He swept past it, eager to get to the next hallway. From the observation deck above, the instructors watched. He missed the corner. One captain noted pen hovering over a clipboard. "He's dead." Suddenly a target popped out from the blind spot, a robotic mannequin armed with a paint-round cannon. It leveled its barrel at Kowalski's back, but before the machine could fire, a single shot rang out. Crack! The target's head snapped back, a clean hole right through the sensor plate. Kowalski spun around, wide-eyed. He hadn't fired. Carter hadn't fired. Jordan Vance lowered her weapon. She had transitioned from her primary rifle to her sidearm, fired a single shot over Kowalski's shoulder, while dragging the 180-pound hostage dummy with her left hand, and neutralized the threat he had missed. She did it all in less than a second, without breaking stride. "Clear left," Jordan said into the comms, her voice flat. Carter paused for a microsecond, stunned. That was an impossible shot, one-handed off balance, dragging dead weight. "Moving." Carter grunted, refusing to acknowledge it. "Keep up." They finished the run in record time, 3 minutes, 12 seconds. When they pulled their helmets off in the debriefing area, the adrenaline was high. The instructor, a grizzled lieutenant commander named Ricks, walked down the line. "Sloppy on the entry, Carter," Ricks barked. "Kowalski, you're dead. That tang would have put 2 in your spine." "Equipment malfunction on the sweep, sir." Kowalski lied, shifting uncomfortably. "Save it," Ricks snapped. Then he turned to Jordan. He looked her up and down. She was covered in sweat, the long sleeves Carter forced her to wear clinging to her arms. "Vance, that shot in room 2? "Yes, sir." Lucky Ricks said dismissively. "You broke formation to take it. If you missed, you would have hit Kowalski. Reckless. We don't do cowboy shit here. We do precision." Jordan blinked. She hadn't broken formation. She had covered a sector left open by incompetence. But she knew the game. If she argued, she was emotional. If she stayed silent, she was submissive. "Understood, sir," she said. Carter smirked, nudging Miller. "Told you. Reckless. Probably had her eyes closed." Later that night in the barracks, the mockery continued. Jordan was cleaning her weapon, her sleeves rolled up again due to the stifling heat. The ugly tattoo was visible. "Hey, Vance," Miller called out from his bunk. "I figured out what that tat is. It's a cracked egg, right?" Because you cracked under pressure today." The men laughed. Even the ones who weren't malicious joined in just to be part of the pack. "You know," Carter said, walking by her bunk. "General Stone arrives in 48 hours. Rumor is he's looking to trim the fat from the task force. I'm going to do you a favor. I'll recommend you for a transfer to logistics. You can drive trucks. You won't have to worry about complex tactics or aesthetic standards." He gestured to her arm. Jordan didn't look up from her rifle. She reassembled the bolt carrier group with a metallic click that sounded final. "I'm not going anywhere, Master Chief," she said. "We'll see," Carter replied. "When Stone sees you, he's going to wonder why we let a graffiti artist into the teams." Little did they know, General Harlan Stone was indeed coming. But he wasn't coming to inspect the barracks. He was coming to find the ghost who had saved his soul. The next day the joke stopped. A code black alert came through from command. A humanitarian aid convoy had been ambushed in the Pesh Valley. Among the VIPs trapped was a U.S. senator's son and several CIA field agents. Taliban forces had them pinned down in a narrow ravine. Air support was grounded due to a massive sandstorm rolling in. "It's a ground pound," Carter briefed the team, his face serious. "We go in, secure the VIPs, and get out before the storm hits zero visibility. Vance, you're on comms and rear security. Stay out of the way." The flight in was turbulent. The Chinook helicopter bucked against the wind. When they touched down, the world was a haze of brown dust and screaming wind. "Go, go, go!" The team moved into the ravine. The sound of gunfire was deafening. RPGs slammed into the rock walls above them, showering them with shale. They reached the convoy. It was a slaughterhouse. Burning vehicles, screaming civilians. Carter and Miller moved to secure the senator's son, dragging him from a wrecked SUV. "We got the package," Carter yelled over the radio. "Move to Exfil." But as they turned to leave, the trap sprung. Machine gun fire erupted from 3 sides. It was a well-coordinated L-shaped ambush. The enemy had baited them in. "Contact front! Contact right!" Kowalski screamed, firing his SAW machine gun wildly. A mortar round landed 20 feet away. The concussion wave knocked Carter off his feet. He slammed into a boulder, dazed blood trickling from his ear. Miller took a round to the shoulder and went down screaming. Chaos took over. The dust was so thick they couldn't see the enemy, but the enemy could see them. "Pull back! Pull back!" Kowalski yelled, grabbing Miller by his vest. "We can't!" Carter groaned, trying to stand but stumbling. "We're pinned! We need suppressive fire!" But they were outgunned. The enemy was closing in shadows, moving through the dust cloud. They were going to die there. Then Jordan Vance moved. She didn't retreat. She didn't panic. She dropped her pack, grabbed a specialized DMR-designated marksman rifle from the fallen CIA agent's body, and sprinted toward the enemy fire. "Vance, get back here!" Carter screamed. "That's a suicide run." Jordan ignored him. She scrambled up a precarious rock face, exposing herself to the fire. Bullets chipped the stone inches from her face. She reached a high vantage point, a sniper's nest, that looked down into the enemy trench lines. She took a breath, slowing her heart rate despite the chaos. Bang! One target down. Bang! The RPG gunner dropped. Bang! The machine gunner silenced. She was a machine. Every shot was a kill. She was drawing all the enemy fire onto herself, turning her position into a lightning rod to buy the team time. "Move now!" Her voice crackled over the comms, calm and commanding. "I have the high ground. Go!" Carter looked up at the ridge. He saw the muzzle flashes from Jordan's position. She was holding off 50 insurgents single-handedly. "Let's move!" Carter yelled, grabbing the VIP. They dragged the wounded back to the extraction point. As they loaded into the arriving helicopter, Carter looked back. The ridge where Jordan was positioned was being hammered by mortar fire. "We can't leave her," Kowalski yelled. "She's gone!" Miller groaned, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Nobody survives that." Suddenly a figure emerged from the dust cloud, sprinting toward the bird. Jordan was limping, blood soaking her left pant leg, her uniform torn. She turned and fired 3 last shots, covering her own retreat, before diving onto the ramp of the helicopter as it lifted off. She collapsed on the floor of the Chinook, gasping for air. Her sleeve was torn away, revealing the jagged black tattoo on her arm. Carter stared at her. He stared at the blood, the dust, and the ink. He didn't say a word. He just looked away. The silence inside the tactical debriefing room at Bagram Airfield was heavier than the humid air outside. 3 days had passed since the extraction from the Peck Valley, and the dust had settled, but the reckoning had just begun. The room smelled of stale coffee floor wax and the metallic tang of fear. Chief Petty Officer Jordan Vance stood at the far end of the formation, her posture rigid, despite the fire burning in her injuries. Her left arm was heavily bandaged, the gauze stark white against her skin. But the bottom edge of the black tattoo was still visible, peeking out like a dark secret. Beside her, Master Chief Carter stood with his chest puffed out. He had spent the last 48 hours crafting his narrative. In his version of events, the ambush was an intel failure, the retreat was a strategic withdrawal, and Vance was a loose cannon who had endangered the team with a cowboy stunt for glory. "He's going to fry you," Miller whispered from the side of his mouth, his arm in a sling. "General Stone doesn't tolerate rogues." Carter smirked, staring straight ahead. "She's done. I've already filed the disciplinary report regarding uniform violations. That tattoo is the final nail in the coffin. Stone hates mess, and she is a mess." The heavy oak doors swung open. "Room attention." The command snapped through the air like a whip crack. Everyone froze. General Harlan, the Iron Monk. Stone walked in. He didn't march. He glided a predator moving through tall grass. He was a man carved from granite, with silver hair cut high and tight, and eyes that seemed to X-ray the soul of every soldier he looked at. He was accompanied by 2 aides and a JAG officer, but they were ghosts compared to his presence. Stone didn't take a seat at the head of the table. He threw his cap onto the mahogany surface and began to pace the line of soldiers. He stopped in front of Kowalski first. "You fired 300 rounds of ammunition." Stone said, his voice low, but carrying to every corner of the room. "And you achieved 0 confirmed kills. You panicked, petty officer. You sprayed and prayed." Kowalski swallowed hard. "Sir, the visibility was—" "Silence," Stone hissed. He moved on. He stopped in front of Carter. The Master Chief stood taller, confident that he and the general were cut from the same cloth, old-school, hard-nosed leaders. "Master Chief Carter," Stone said, reading the name tape on Carter's chest as if it were a stain. "I've read your after-action report. It's a compelling work of fiction." Carter blinked, his confidence wavering for a fraction of a second. "Sir, I don't understand. We executed a tactical withdrawal to secure the VIP. You abandoned a position because you lost control of the battle space," Stone corrected, leaning in close. "You let yourself get pinned down by a force half your size. And then, according to the drone footage and the telemetry from your body cams, you were ready to leave a team member behind." Carter's throat went dry. He needed to pivot. He needed to shift the blame. "Sir, with respect," Carter said, his voice gaining strength. "The team cohesion was compromised from the start. We were saddled with irregular elements." He gestured slightly toward Jordan at the end of the line. Specialist Vance disobeyed direct orders to hold position. She went rogue. It's hard to maintain command when you have a subordinate who thinks she's playing a video game. Stone turned his head slowly, looking down the line at Jordan. He didn't speak. Emboldened, Carter pressed his advantage. Furthermore, General, there are standards in this unit. Discipline starts with appearance. Specialist Vance has refused to adhere to uniform regulations regarding body art. She displays offensive gang-style markings on her forearm that undermine the professionalism of SEAL Team 4. I tried to correct her, but she was insubordinate. I recommend she be scrubbed from the program immediately. The room went deadly quiet. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. General Stone stared at Jordan. "Is this true, Vance?" Jordan looked forward, her eyes locked on the wall behind the general. "I acted to suppress the enemy so the team could extract Sir. As for the tattoo, it is not gang-related." "It looks like prison scratch to me," Carter interrupted, unable to help himself. "It's a disgrace." General Stone turned back to Carter. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The general's face was unreadable, a mask of stone. "A disgrace," Stone repeated softly. "You think that mark is a disgrace?" "Yes, General. It's ugly. It's chaotic. It represents everything we're not." Stone nodded slowly. "I see." The general began to undo the buttons of his dress uniform jacket. He took it off, handing it to an aide. Then he began to unbutton the cuff of his starched, pristine green shirt. "Master Chief, do you know where I was 5 years ago?" Stone asked, his voice conversational, almost gentle. "I believe you were overseeing operations in West Africa, sir." "Correct," Stone said. He rolled the sleeve up, folding the fabric precisely over his elbow. "I was in the Niger Delta. My convoy was hit by Boko Haram. It was a massacre. My detail was wiped out in 30 seconds. I was dragged into the jungle, thrown into a pit, and beaten until I couldn't see out of my left eye." Stone finished rolling the sleeve. He held his arm out under the bright lights. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. There on the general's forearm, inked into the aged, tough skin, was a tattoo. It was identical to Jordan's. The same jagged, interlocking black geometrical lines, the same shattered shield shape, the same 3 distinct, ugly scratches inside the border. Carter's eyes bulged. He looked from the general's arm to Jordan's bandaged limb. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like he might faint. "Do you know what this prison scratch means?" "Carter." Stone asked, his voice rising, vibrating with a terrible anger. "No, sir." Carter whispered, his knees shaking. "It's a map," Stone roared, the sound echoing off the walls. "It's the map of the river delta where I spent 4 days crawling through mud and leech-infested water." He walked over to Jordan, standing beside her, not as a superior, but as an equal. "I was dying." Stone told the room, his eyes wet with memory. Infection had set in. The terrorists were hunting us with dogs. I had given up. I was ready to put a bullet in my own head rather than be captured again. He placed a hand on Jordan's uninjured shoulder. "But she wouldn't let me. She wasn't a SEAL then. She was a ghost attached to a CIA task force. She tracked me for 40 miles. She infiltrated the camp alone, with nothing but a knife and a suppressed pistol. She carried me. When I couldn't walk, she dragged me. When I couldn't drink, she gave me the last drops from her canteen." Stone traced the 3 scratches on his arm. "These aren't gang signs. These represent the 3 days we hid in the reeds, submerged in water up to our chins, waiting for the extraction bird. We made a pact. If we got out, we would wear the map. We would wear the scars. It means death couldn't take us." Stone turned slowly to face Carter. The look of disgust on the general's face was absolute. "You mocked her," Stone said, his voice quiet and dangerous. You looked at a warrior who saved my life, who has more combat experience in her little finger than you have in your entire career, and you called her a thug. Sir, I didn't know, Carter stammered, sweat pouring down his face. She never said. She didn't tell us. Because she has honor, Stone shouted. Because she doesn't need to brag to feel like a soldier. Unlike you. Stone snapped his fingers. The JAG officer stepped forward with a clipboard. Master Chief Brody Carter, Stone announced. You are hereby relieved of command for gross incompetence, failure to support your team, and conduct unbecoming of a naval operator. Carter opened his mouth to protest, but Stone cut him off. I am stripping you of your rank. You are demoted to Petty Officer First Class, and since you seem to care so much about cleaning up messes, your new assignment is base sanitation at Fort Polk. You will spend the next 2 years scrubbing dumpsters. Maybe there you'll learn some humility. Sir, please, Carter begged, tears forming in his eyes. My pension. Get him out of my sight before I court-martial him for cowardice, Stone barked. 2 MPs stepped forward, grabbing Carter by the arms. As they dragged the broken man out of the room, Miller and Kowalski stood paralyzed, terrified to even breathe. When the doors closed, the energy in the room shifted. The fear evaporated, replaced by a profound, heavy respect. General Stone buttoned his sleeve. He turned to Jordan Vance. He looked at her battered face, the exhaustion in her eyes, and the bandage on her arm. He snapped to attention. Slowly, deliberately, the 4-star general raised his hand in a crisp salute. It's good to see you, Ghost, Stone said softly. Jordan straightened her back, ignoring the pain in her ribs. She returned the salute, her hand steady, a small, genuine smile breaking through her stoic mask. Good to see you, Harlan, she replied. For the first time since arriving at the base, nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. The men looked at the ugly black ink on the general's arm, and then at the matching ink on the woman they had mocked. They finally understood. It wasn't a scratch. It was the mark of a legend. Jordan Vance proved that true power doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who's already survived the war you're just preparing for. Never judge a book or a soldier by their cover. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit the like button. It helps us create more videos. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. What do you think of General Stone's revenge? Let us know in the comments.